Have you noticed how quickly some people on social media rush to expose the bad behavior of others? One screenshot, one angry caption, one viral thread, one performance of outrage. Suddenly, the person calling out the offense becomes the center of attention. They look brave, morally alert, and socially conscious. But beneath that public certainty sits a harder question. Are they trying to correct wrongdoing? Or are they using someone else's wrongdoing as a stage for attention, approval, and moral status? That question leads directly into the idea of moral grandstanding. The term was developed by philosophers Justin Tosi and Brandon Warmke. In philosophy and public affairs, they define moral grandstanding as the use of public moral talk for self-promotion. That definition is important because it shifts the issue away from whether a statement is morally correct and toward what the speaker is doing with that statement socially. A person can say something true, justified, or even necessary, yet still use it to raise their status in the eyes of others. In that sense, moral grandstanding is not simply moral speech. It is moral speech used as social climbing. Psychologists later tested whether this was more than a philosophical complaint. Joshua Grubbs, a clinical psychologist, worked with Warmke, Tosi, and others to study moral grandstanding empirically. They found support for it as a measurable construct, linking it to status-seeking personality traits and greater political conflict in daily life. If you are following this presentation, please take a moment to hit the like button and turn on your notification bell. This tells the algorithm that the video is relevant. And if this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. One of the most useful parts of that research is the distinction between prestige striving and dominance striving. Prestige striving is the desire to be seen as noble, principled, or morally admirable. Dominance striving is the desire to overpower, shame, or morally crush others in public. Both are status-seeking, but they wear different masks. One says, "Look how admirable I am." The other says, "Look how beneath me they are." Social media makes this pattern much easier to perform. Platforms reward visibility, certainty, and emotional intensity. A carefully framed call-out post can bring likes, reposts, and praise from one's in-group within minutes. That is why online moral speech often becomes theatrical. The audience is not incidental. The audience is part of the point. Research in Science Advances found that when users receive positive social feedback for expressions of moral outrage, they become more likely to post similar outrage again in the future. In other words, social media does not merely host moral outrage, it can train and reinforce it. This helps explain why public call-out culture can become addictive. At first, a user may expose bad behavior because they sincerely care about accountability. But once moral condemnation starts bringing applause, the incentives shift. The person may begin to seek not only justice, but also the glow that comes from publicly appearing just. Social media turns morality into something measurable, and once it becomes measurable, it becomes easier to optimize for display. Consider Blackout Tuesday in June 2020. Millions of users posted black squares in solidarity. But many of those posts used the hashtag Black Lives Matter, flooding the feed and making it harder to find protest information, donation links, and safety updates. This does not prove that every black square was grandstanding. Motive cannot be read directly off a post, but it shows a central feature of the phenomenon. Symbolic moral display can become more visible than meaningful support, and sometimes can even interfere with the cause it claims to advance. At this point, caution is essential. Moral grandstanding is about motive, and motive is difficult to prove from the outside. Philosophers A.K. Flowery and Mark Satta argue that people are often not reliable at identifying grandstanding in others, and that we should be careful not to turn the concept into another lazy accusation. The point is not to assume that every public act of moral criticism is insincere. The point is to understand the incentives that can turn moral speech into performance. So, how does moral grandstanding usually play out? First, the audience becomes central. Second, certainty becomes performative. Nuance is too slow for virality. Third, identity merges with moral display. And fourth, hypocrisy becomes the inevitable risk. Once someone climbs onto the moral stage, the audience starts inspecting the costume. The deeper problem is not that morality appears in public. Healthy societies need public moral language. The problem begins when the need to be seen as morally superior starts overtaking the need to tell the truth. A morally serious person wants the good to be done, even if no one praises them for it. A grandstander wants to be seen standing on the side of the good. In the age of viral outrage, that may be one of the most important psychological and civic distinctions we can learn to make. So, how do we protect ourselves from this cycle? To avoid falling for someone else's performance, look for proportionality. Ask if the outrage matches the offense, or if it's being dialed up to catch the algorithm's eye. Look for nuance, because truth is rarely as loud or as simple as a viral thread makes it out to be. And to resist the temptation to grandstand ourselves, try the private test. Ask yourself, would I still be saying this if no one could like the post? If I received no public credit for this stance, would I still take it? If the answer is no, you aren't fighting for justice. You're fighting for an audience. Real change happens in the quiet work, in the difficult conversations, and in the actions we take when the camera isn't rolling. In an age of viral noise, integrity is the ultimate quiet revolution. If this deep dive gave you a new perspective on your feed, please hit that like button. It really helps small channels like this reach more people who are tired of the noise. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Have you ever caught yourself grandstanding? Or have you seen a movement get derailed by symbolic gestures? Let's get a real conversation going. And if you want more psychological breakdowns and ethical deep dives, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on those notifications. Thanks for watching, and stay grounded.